I'll call the meeting to order. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Hagan.
Present.
Councilmember Kerr.
Present.
Councilmember Martin.
Present.
Councilmember Torment.
Aye.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Present.
Mayor Riley.
Present.
There are 6 members present.
Thank you. And now if we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks.
This meeting this evening is a little bit different from the way we normally conduct our meetings. Normally we'd have a work session at this point, at this time between 4 and 6, and then have the council meeting from 7 to 9. Because of the way the agenda worked out, we decided instead just to have one meeting. We'll start the meeting now, the council meeting, and cover works session agenda items during the discussion period. Part of it was for efficiency. We believe that we could have ended up with an extremely long council meeting and a shorter work session. So we combined it this time. We'll see how it works out. I'm pleased to see all the attendance that we have today. This is a little bit unusual meeting. I've heard that some of you think we're going to have a open discussion of trails and open space today. That's not true. We are going to have a presentation by the Forest Service. And the reason we asked the Forest Service to come in is because the town is trying to continue to build a close relationship working with them as our partner. But those of you who are here and would like to speak, you're more than free to speak during the communications to council portion on any subject you'd like. So feel free to talk. Because we did change things up, we'll end up having 2 sessions for communications to council. We'll have one now, and then after we come back from our dinner break, and we go back into session, I'll open it up for comments too, because again, we may have people who come to the normal start time for the council meeting at 7, thinking they'd have an opportunity to speak. And I just don't want to deny them that. Any objections from council members for doing that? So with that, can I have an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. And now we come to communications to council. And again, you're free to speak on any topic you would like, not just of non-agenda topics at this point. And the microphone is open. And please line up. Please state your name and where you live or work in Keystone. And please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Would anyone like to speak? Is there anyone online who would like to speak?
Those up here, we have one person raising their hand.
Great.
Keith.
Yeah, hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I just wanted to share a quick excerpt.
Could you please state your name, where you live and work in Keystone?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's great. No, my name's Eric Keith. I've lived in Summit County for a decade. I live in Silverthorne currently, but my first job 10 years ago was in River Run with Keystone Sports. So tight ties to Keystone area. I currently live in Silverthorne and work in Breckenridge.
All right.
And I really just, like I said, I've been, since the first day I stepped in Summit County, it was in Keystone, Colorado. So I've got some pretty tight ties to that area of the county. And I just wanted to share my concern, which is that there isn't an appropriate representation I feel, within the entities here today for the bicycle and mountain biking community. It seems to me that there may be a lack of understanding as to what that user group truly desires. For example, in some of the recent decisions and actions we've seen taken around the trail building, modifications, designs, and whatnot in the Keystone area. So I'd love to see further consultation with the bicycle community and professionals when taking on these new initiatives. I do certainly think this approach would help foster more excitement and involvement within this user group. And I think we're seeing a lot of success with that in other parts of just Summit County. So I'd love for you all to consider that moving forward when making these decisions on these trails specifically.
All right.
Thank you.
And one additional comment, again, if folks would like to speak on, or not to speak, but have input on trails and open space, the council is using a Trails and Open Space Advisory Committee as really the place where the recommendations to council are going to be coming from. So my recommendation would be focus on influencing the members of the Trails and Open Space Committee. Once they've deliberated and come up with eventually a master plan, then they'll be presenting that to council. And then you can lobby us all you want.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification.
And we now have some people who would like to speak.
Sorry, I wasn't clear on the process.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I'm Sam Schletzky. I'm the executive director at SCOMA, the Summit County Mountain Bike Alliance. Just had a quick couple of concerns from both myself, our board, and some community members and riders who have shared with us their concerns. First is regarding the destruction of Frog Trail, questions around how that is a viable process. We're just curious, is this really the best case scenario to see the trail in that surrounding area treated in that manner? We understand the need to close that trail, but really at what cost to the environment is that really worth it with that really intense disruption to that zone? For the sake of time. Secondly, you have step over gates at Tenderfoot Meadows. I completely understand and support limiting access for concerns with moto riders accessing the moto legal trails above that area. I'm not saying that should change, but the amount of step over gates and the disruption to the rider, trail runner, and really all trail user experience of having to navigate those multiple times through a pretty short ride or run in that area is limiting the moto access in that specific manner really worth the cost to the trail user experience there was the biggest question that's done with it. And what other ways could consider limiting moto use in that trail to the trails above that wouldn't necessarily come with such a cost for trail user experience in that zone. And then just regarding the conversation around the closure at Tenderfoot during the winter, is there any conversation around this potentially being an evening closure during the winter? A lot of people like to commute through that zone. It's a great area for Nordic skiing, fat biking, snowshoeing during that season, and we know and support the reason for that winter closure. But are just wondering, if there's any kind of data or proof that shows it could be viable to be open during the day to kind of strike that further balance between conservation and land use there for community members. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Lori. I'm a 30-year resident of Summit County. Have strong ties to Keystone and Loveland Test Village. So I'm devastated as far as how that trail was decommissioned. My question is, as far as the way it went, all that mitigation work that's about 100 yards up, it's kind of a waste because all the fallen live aspen trees that were down, hundreds of trees that walked that mile. The whole mile was destroyed. So I was just curious on why it was done that way. And if it's for wildlife, I'm not sure if anybody can get through there. I take my dog on that trail and it's pretty tough for him to mitigate over those, how they dug it up. So that's just my main concern. So I'm sorry that happened.
Well, thank you. At this point, I want to be clear about one thing. The trails that have been just mentioned are not part of the town of Keystone. They're part of the National Forest. It's very good today that the Dillon Ranger District is here, and I'm happy they were able to hear those comments. But again, the town had no input in that, and that's one of the reasons that we want to establish a good relationship with the Ranger District, so we have a heads up when those sort of things are coming up and potentially have an opportunity to influence those decisions as they go forward. But again, the town was not part of that decision at all and have no authority in that area. All right. Next item on the,
We do have one more person on.
all right,
Christy Camp.
all right, Christy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, wonderful. I just would like to say that I would love to collaborate with Friends of Dillon Ranger District or the National Services. I voiced a concern on an email and I don't know if it got read. But I can read it to you now. I'm concerned about limitations to nature and opportunities. And I understand that these are connecting. I just want to support full access to athletic and non-athletic participants or persons in the town or visitors. I appreciate if my comments on the email are registered. It's, supporting programs and students and entrepreneurs to create sustainability for our nature community and our civic engagement, just to have togetherness as a town. We can all be able to access and participate in community development, planning of stewardship to our land and water. And I just feel strongly that maintaining a relationship between residents and nature is our best outcome as a town. And we've just started a Trails and Open Space advisory board. So we would like to support, again, anyone who is also supporting nature and the accessibility to nature. Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments? Anyone else online?
Yes.
All right.
Austin Fennell.
Hi there, my name's Austin Fennell. I live in Summit Cove and I work for Keystone Resort in the winter. I just wanted to comment on, I appreciate there is this discussion between the town and the Forest Service, and I hope that with future discussions about trails, we can work to have Keystone be a source within the county to alleviate some of the overcrowding on other trails within the area. We see other trails in Breckenridge, Frisco, areas like Willowbrook, Buffalo Mountain Trailhead, where there's significant crowding and draws a large amount of tourism, while Keystone, in my experience, as being someone who uses those trails regularly, does not draw that at all. And I think that's influential for business. I think that's influential for rental properties. With my summer job, I work with a lot of tourism, and the area is not used by a lot of out-of-state residents, anecdotally from my experience, and is more used by Colorado residents to stay where it's cheaper, where they still know they have access to things in the county. And they use it as a stepping point off to other areas and other trail networks. and trying to figure out a way to encourage more use for tourism, to have Keystone be an area where people want to stay and can recreate straight out the area from their house, from a condo someone might be renting. Because right now that's difficult to access a lot of these trails. And I live in Summit Cove, and I don't know the best place to park to access some of these trails. I might be there's not really a set trailhead, or am I parking behind the Keystone Science School where I'm really supposed to be able to park? Versus you look at Breckenridge and some of these areas in Frisco and other, where it seems like the interface for people out of the county in particular in tourism, it's much easier for them to navigate. And I hope that by having the Forest Service here and also interactions between the town to work on an open space, Forest Service, town partnership, we can make this an area where it is easier to recreate, and it hopefully continues to draw people to Keystone outside of just our primary winter period of being busy. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And, one comment on the last speaker, his recommendations were one of the major findings out of the RTAF study that we had this last fall, that trails and open space are a major portion of this community, and they're an tremendous untapped potential. Any other comments? All right. In that case, I'll close communications to council, and now I'll invite the Forest Service up.
Would it be better? How's the sound?
It might be better from over there.
All right.
That way I can look at people instead of just talking from the back. And look at you all. Well, thanks, council, for the invitation. My name is Amanda Wheelock. For those of you I haven't worked with before, I'm the acting district ranger. So in case any of you are new to working with the Forest Service, White River National Forest, 2.3 million acres from Eisenhower Tunnel all the way over to Glenwood Canyon, down into the Roaring Fork Valley, and all the way over to Rifle and even up into Meeker and the Flat Tops Wilderness. Every national forest has a forest supervisor. Our forest supervisor is based out of Glenwood Springs. And then every national forest is broken up into districts, ranger districts, and each district is led by a district ranger. So I'm responsible for the team here based out of Silverthorne, as well as the management of just over 300,000 acres of national forest lands that comprise the Dillon Ranger District. Conveniently for you all, same boundaries as Summit County. So pretty easy that any national forest land within Summit County, my team is working on. I did just step into this acting role. Adam Bianchi, who some of you may have worked with, was the district ranger since 2021. And he just left the Forest Service in July. So I was his deputy district ranger. A lot of more complex or busier districts like this one will have that deputy role. So I served as his deputy since the summer of 2023, and then I'm currently serving as the acting district ranger until we can find a replacement for Adam. So that's me. I'll just start also by saying apologies to the council for receiving some comments just now on a project that is not yours. So happy to talk a little bit more too about Forest Service planning processes and both how you all as council members, as well as how members of the public.
One comment.
Yeah.
We have no objection to hearing comments
Okay.
from the public. I just wanted to make it clear that it was something that we had no control over.
Correct.
And this isn't the town's responsibility, but the relationship with the Forest Service. And if we had a strong relationship, then we may be able to work with you and partner, because this national forest around us is a gem and is extremely important to this town.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Go ahead.
So I can speak a little bit to some of those, how those planning processes work for the Forest Service. And then I'd love to give an update about some projects, both current and future planned here around, in and around the town of Keystone. So in general, the Forest Service, every single time us or any federal agency takes on any project, we have to analyze it under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. You may have seen it in the news a lot recently. If you follow those sorts of news, there's a lot of changes currently proposed to NEPA. I will not comment on those today, but just to say that part of any federal process, whether it's the Forest Service, whether it's FAA building a new airport, anything like that, we, depending on the level of impact to the environment, we have to involve stakeholders, the public in varying levels of commitment. Sometimes there's a mandatory 90-day comment period all the way down to there's some projects where we've done them so many times and in so many places. We really know approximately what the impacts to the environment are going to be, and we're not actually required to go out to the public at all. Here in the Dillon Ranger District, we often, on most projects that we do, go out to the public for comment, even when we're not required to, because we know we have a county and a community that values the public lands, cares a lot about their management, which is one of my favorite parts of working here. I've worked in other places where we'll host a public meeting on a project, and it's a pretty big project, and 2 people show up. And we have hosted projects here in open houses where we have 70, 80, 100 people showing up, taking time out of their own schedules to say, hey, can I learn more about this? Hey, I've got some input. And we really love when people take the time to do that, because we're proud to steward the lands here, and we want to understand what the community thinks. So with the Frog Trail project in particular, that was a NEPA, again, National Environmental Policy Act process that we went through back in the summer of 2023. That is what's considered a categorical exclusion. So it's one of those where small trail reconstructions like that, we do it so often across the Forest Service that we kind of know what the impacts are going to be. There's going to be some localized impacts to a few trees, to the trail itself, and then we'll provide a different recreational experience at the end. So it's one of those where we don't have to go out to the public or even to any of our partners at all. In that project, my understanding, and this was just as I was joining the team, and I'll finish my sentence, Aaron, and then if you want to ask a question. So I was not involved with that project, so I've done my research, but just full disclosure that I wasn't part of the team at that time. So I wasn't involved with this project, but my understanding is that we did not go out for full public scoping, like we didn't send out a press release. What we did was we sent it to specific partners that we knew would be interested in the project, Summit County Open Space, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, as well as to the email list that is part of basically you can sign up on our website if you're interested in projects like this. And then it's called the Schedule of Proposed Actions. We put every project that we're going to do on that Schedule of Proposed Actions. And then when something happens like a scoping period or a public comment period, anyone who has signed up for that list, members of the public, organizations, will get an email. They can pick, okay, I'm only interested in projects in this certain area. That being said, one of the proposed changes to NEPA this year is that Schedule of Proposed Actions would go away. That's not a Dillon Ranger District change. That's not a White River National Forest change. That's a federal change that I don't have control over. Do you want me to keep going or question?
I had 2 questions. One is, you characterize this as a small trail project, but I'm wondering how you can characterize the complete demolition of about 2.5 miles of trail and the construction of 2 new miles of trail as a small project with a few trees. We're talking about hundreds of trees, and we're talking about 5 miles of trail deletion and creation. How is that it's not a small reroute.
Sure. So the CE category that this fell under, categorical exclusion, again, and if I don't explain acronyms, please stop me because I'm a bad federal employee and I use too many acronyms. So the categorical exclusion is called reconstruction of trails, recreation areas, et cetera. I don't have the full legal language in front of me. There's no mileage limit on that. I'm used to managing over 300,000 acres of public lands with several hundred miles of trails. So sorry if I don't mean to diminish anything, but it was about 1 mile of trail that was decommissioned, and then about 2 new miles of trail that were built. So that legally falls into our category of deconstruction, reconstruction of trails.
And then the follow-up question is, I appreciate that you said that the goal was to reach out to your mailing list. The issue I have is that I'm on that mailing list, and I know a lot of people who are, and all of us have searched our emails, and we did not receive any message on that. And the only comment that you all subsequently received was from CPW, which indicates that there was no actual outreach beyond perhaps a partner agency with direct communication. And I think that you've seen here, you've mentioned that you might get 2 people coming on, one thing you might get 70. This is the largest turnout that we've ever seen online or in person that I can remember. We had 6 comments on one subject in person and online, but there's well over a dozen other written comments, and most of them do make mention of the Frog Trail. So I think the feedback I'm bringing here is, I think something went wrong in that public feedback issue, because you would have certainly gotten many comments and you got 0.
I don't think it's fair to say that we certainly would have gotten many comments. We frequently go out for trail projects like this across the county and receive 0 comments. Part of that is admittedly our own limitations as a federal agency. The Forest Service policy is that we get 1 Facebook account for the whole forest, not the district. We have 1 Instagram account for the entire Forest Service. We're not allowed to deviate from that locally. So admittedly, like, one of the things that I have a challenge with myself as a manager is getting the word out to the public. And that's, I think, one of the reasons why our relationships with Town of Keystone, with SCOMBA, with Summit County Open Space are really important, because they have the ability to help amplify messages that we don't always have. Now, granted, Keystone was not yet formally incorporated as a town when this project went out for scoping. Otherwise, they certainly would have been on our mailing list. I'm happy to check into whether or not, I mean, that email does automatically go out every time we are adding a project to that schedule of proposed actions. That being said, it's like an automated federal thing. So it's totally possible that it didn't, and that was an oversight. Again, I wasn't involved with the project at that time. We do make our best efforts to communicate with the public, but I totally admit that a lot of times we rely on our partners to help us get that word out, because as a federal agency, our communication tools are perhaps more limited than I would like them to be. That's why we also do usually send out press releases, again, even when we're not required to go out for public comment. We do try to do that here. I wasn't part of the team at the time, so I'm not privy to the discussions about why we chose for this project specifically not to put out a press release. I have no idea if it was as simple as the guy who normally writes our press releases was on a fire assignment at that time. I unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to answer that question for you.
Sure. I think my point was more that we look forward to collaborating and communicating out to our constituents. And that I think that there was an error, because even though on check it was stated that you guys sent the emails, there's people who would have received them who very much did not check their emails, and people who absolutely would have, and then have subsequently raised their voices on this, who would have then. And I think there's some key misunderstandings around the project that might have been brought into discussion. And I don't know if this was a technical error, whatever the oversight was. I just want to bring it to your attention that despite the best intentions, the reason you're hearing so much angst on this project is not just that people care about it, it's that despite whatever methods were employed, they didn't reach people who would have been reached and would have commented.
Can I ask you to please move on?
Sure.
I think we've spent enough time on something that we can't change, but we can impact the future with the future relationship.
Absolutely. So with that, I just want to say too, in terms of building a relationship with the town of Keystone, we were pleased to be represented as part of that. You referenced the RTAP working group, and we were had a representative as part of that, and we're grateful to be part of that process and look forward. You know, we work regularly with Record Ridge Open Space Advisory Committee as well as Summit County Open Space Advisory Committee. And so as you continue to stand up the Keystone Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee, please feel free to extend the invitation so that I or a member of my staff can can participate. We never have, formal membership as part of those committees, but we're always happy to join the discussion. Some other big projects going on in the Keystone area. Some of you have probably noticed the implementation so far of Snake River Water District building or Metro District building the Snake River water tank. So that project is currently being implemented and the water tank is being built and installed this summer. Excel has expressed, we've been working for a while with Excel on the Hunky Dory gas pipeline, which is under Keystone Road, just east of Mountain House. But there is a tiny chunk on National Forest. We've been working with them, and it sounds like implementation may have actually started yesterday under emergency authority per Excel, which was news to me this morning. Keystone to a basin, another Excel project. So there's a transmission line that runs just from outside of the town boundaries, but figured you all might be interested as well, all the way up to the A Basin Ski Resort. Those lines are about 80 years old, so they're due for replacement. And so Excel has been working with us to start the process again, since it's on federal land, even though it's an Excel project. Again, with some exceptions, like they have some emergency authority if there's a true emergency about to happen, and or just things that are in their operations and maintenance plan and their permits with us. But then these bigger projects like a full line replacement, it's the same process. We go through that National Environmental Policy Act review. We open it up sometimes to particular parties, sometimes to the public, usually the public less interested in power lines than trails in my experience. But that is one that we're just starting to work with Excel on because that is a pretty long stretch of line and it goes through some wetlands, some roadless area, some historical resources. So there's a lot of pieces on National Forest land that we want to make sure that a basin continues to get reliable power. And we also want to look out for our natural resources in that area. So that will be, that's just starting really in the kind of pre-planning process.
On that, if
Yeah.
I might, with the increase in wildfires that we're noticing in other states in the country, is there any adjustment to NEPA's or the Excel's process when reviewing what kind of transmission lines are going to be installed there to replace the aging infrastructure?
Yes, and that is one where we are not power expert. We're putting out fire experts, but we're not, which power line causes was more or less likely to cause a fire experts. So that's one where we do, kind of rely on Excel's expertise of what they want to install and why. But that's also something we work with them kind of not just at my level, but at the state, forest-wide and even statewide level to understand that. But certainly it's one where, we really want to work with them to make sure that that aging infrastructure gets replaced in a timely manner.
And so basically, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's Excel that is the driver of the decision on what kind of power lines go in there.
Yes.
Okay.
We have review of anything, and that's something that like my engineers would review. But again, they're more, they're not working for a power company day in and day out. So sometimes I have engineers on staff that have that expertise. But frequently that's Excel and their consultants as well that, and again, a lot of those, if there's anything, like a material that we wouldn't allow them to use or something, that would come down from like the National Forest Service or the state, that sort of level.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So Keystone Resort we're about to go out for scoping for a project that they've proposed to us for the replacement of the A51 chairlift. So that is one that will go out to our scoping list. You'll see a press release about it. So usually the Summit Daily picks those up, although again, I'm not in control of their editorial decisions, so not always, but we'll try to send it to them, or we will send it to them, and usually they'll pick those things up. So that's one where if members of the public or if the town of Keystone has an opinion about that, that's exactly the time that we want you to get involved and that those comments are really helpful to us. This one is a relatively simple, it's just a lift replacement in the same footprint. So not some of the more complex projects that we see at the ski areas sometimes. But that being said, there's always potential that there's a factor that we don't know about. And that's why we go out and ask partners and ask the public for comments and concerns. So that one should be out within the next month, I would say, that you'll see that go out to public scoping. And then last but certainly not least, the Swan Mountain project that we signed back last summer. That's a big combined fuels and recreation project. I know we've talked at least with the mayor about that project before, but not the whole council that I'm aware of. So that one, we already started some implementation shortly after signing the decision with the restoration of the Soda Creek wetlands. So there was a contractor out there, and that was a really cool partnership with the National Forest Foundation. And then if you've been out to Soda Creek since last September, you've probably seen like a bunch of netting and some weird sticks poking out of the ground. So the contractor that was hired through the National Forest Foundation partnership actually installed, I think, well over 100 beaver dam analogs. There are beavers that live upstream in Soda Creek. And so the goal essentially of that sort of type of restoration is that if we create, if humans create beaver habitat, then the beavers ultimately will want to expand and go back into their historic areas. So that was a wetland restoration that we started last fall. And the goal is that hopefully within 3 to 5 years, we would see beavers move in there and kind of start taking down the beaver dam analogs and building actual beaver dams. The other pieces of that Swan Mountain project were about 1,500 acres of fuels work, some mechanical and some hand treatments, and then quite a few miles of trails reconstructions, some new trails. So the fuels piece of that, we are working right now with the Colorado State Forest Service to see if we can start implementing some of that next summer. Combination of some of the hand units and some of the mechanical units. And then we're also currently considering our program of work for the forest staff resources next summer. So we may start some of the rec improvements or the rec implementation, excuse me, there as well next summer, but that kind of remains to be seen. Just kind of the broader state of the forest. We have since January, due to voluntary resignations as part of the deferred resignation program that was federal government wide, early retirements, things like that. We have lost about 1/3 of our staff on the White River since January. So we went from about 150 at the start of the year to just about 100. Locally, we've lost some key people. Adam Bianchi, obviously, as the district ranger, but also some of our lands and recreation staff. So admittedly, you know, we are in a different era than we were even just a few months ago, and trying to understand how best to use the limited resources that we have. We are on a hiring freeze and have been since January. That's also, for the most part, federal government wide, and it's unclear when that will be lifted. So the only thing I would ask to both public and counselors, you know, we are still open at our office down in Silverthorne 6 days a week. This is our last week. And then after Labor Day, we'll go back down to a Monday through Friday schedule. We've got, you know, an email address and a front desk phone number. It's really important to me, and it's really important to our staff that we keep that open and available for folks, whether it's to provide comments on a project or simply just to ask like, hey, I'm going camping this weekend. Is there anything I need to know, or whatever that might be? That being said, if you are contacting our staff, I would just simply ask for a little bit of patience and a little bit of grace, because folks are working with very few resources, and frankly, kind of no relief in sight. So we're still doing our best to take care of the land and to steward the land and support the people. But I do have limited folks, and keeping that office open to the public is a big priority for me, as well as to our forest-wide leadership. But just know that if you're reaching out to a specific staff member on a specific project, if they take a little while to get back to you, that's probably why. That's kind of what I got.
Can I ask a question?
No.
I have a question. So if you're talking about staff, right, and we're down from 150 to 100, and so obviously looking at that, like projects you're doing right now are priorities, I'd presume. So why was the decommissioning of the Frog Trail deemed a priority given the staff volumes that are down, right? Like for me, and I understand the process started in 2023, years before what happened this year happened. But I'm confused at why that trail decommissioning went through as a priority. given the staff?
Sure. So I would say that the planning processes, that NEPA process is usually where we really feel staff shortages more so than in the implementation. So that definitely is part of it, is that was that planning process did happen in 2023 when our rec department was a bit more staffed up. The reasons why we chose to do that project were a few. Number one, it was a really unsustainable trail. It basically went straight up the fall line. So we were seeing a lot of erosion impacts. And that's something that, we really look at, not just from a recreational experience of getting a trail, kind of rutted out and not being very pleasant. If any of you have ever hiked on Meadow Creek Trail over in Frisco, you could see some really, really aggressive impacts of erosion until this summer when our trail crew got out and did some really awesome work over there as well. So if you haven't hiked on the Meadow Creek Trail since it really reopened, I would strongly encourage it. So that's one piece is, we're looking at that recreational experience up that fall line trail. Takes a ton of maintenance from our staff if we do need to get out there and rework on a trail just to do basic maintenance because it's on that unsustainable tread. But it also impacts water resources, right? When we have a bunch of dirt just free flowing down a fall line trail. It's something that a lot of our older trails before kind of like modern trail construction best practices were created. You'll see some of those, and especially around here, you'll see the old mining roads or the old logging roads that go, straight up the hill. And we've since learned that it's really not a good way to build a trail or a road, frankly. But another piece with the Frog Trail in particular was that we were getting, as the Enclave neighborhood got built out, to back up a little bit, the Frog Trail was originally a social trail that was adopted by the Forest Service by the White River in 2010 when we did our travel management, because it was being used by the public. And during that travel management process, that was a decision that we made, was to adopt that as a official Forest Service trail. But we always knew it didn't have great public access. It started from private land because it had originally been essentially built by the public as a social trail. And so that was another reason why we prioritized that project when we did, in the planning piece at least, is that the Enclave neighborhood got built out. And so we were starting to hear complaints from residents of that neighborhood that people were trespassing through their land to get to the trail. That had always been the case, that people were trespassing through that land to get through the trail. But when there weren't houses there, nobody really cared. When there were houses there, they did. So that was another piece of it, was to try to still maintain that recreational experience, but moving the trailhead to a place that actually had public access. In terms of, so it's a prioritization for the planning piece. In terms of the implementation, we worked with National Forest Foundation and the Ski Conservation Fund that's funded by the ski resorts in the area, as well as some lodging partners. And that was because we had already done the planning. It was kind of, shovel ready to go. And we were able to get a grant through Ski Conservation Fund to get the funding to do that project. So it just was on our program of work for the summer, along with a ton of other trail work as well. So.
Any other questions other than Frog Trail?
I'll ask a question about Frog Trail as I'm representing our constituents who brought forth some concerns about this. But I want to ask a question because I'm trying to figure out where you're coming from on this. Did you ever go on the old Frog Trail?
I did not.
Okay.
Personally.
Then I want to apologize to you because I believe you've been misinformed by someone. So there's a couple of facts that folks have brought to me that I just think that you're operating on information that has been provided to you that's counterfactual. So I want to bring this to your attention because we've got this on the public record and the record should be set straight. And that'll allow you to make proper comments and decisions. So first of all, I don't know what your definition of fall line to me, but to me, at least, it's more uphill than cross hill. That trail was cross hill. At no point was it ever fall line. You called it a social trail, but it was machine built and it's been there for about 50 years. You mentioned the Enclave neighborhood, which was completed in construction 44 years ago. And you talked about erosion, but the trail's been erosively stable. And those who actually were on it can attest to that. And what's concerning from the constituents who have brought forth pictures of the demolition done is heavy machinery was used to tear up the topsoil in spring-fed streams. And what I'm hearing is that you're being fed information that's inaccurate about the erosion state while the contractors are actually causing the very problem you were trying to prevent. So when we have communications, I'm very concerned when I'm hearing that you're being provided information and you're trying to make the best decisions in managing your land and caring about your communities, because I know you care deeply about the forest. But I'm just worried when you're being provided information that I don't know where it comes from, but it's not reality. And so I wanted to set that record point straight and hear what your thoughts are on it.
My thoughts are that I have recreation managers on my staff who have 30 years of experience. I have hydrologists who analyzed this project for impacts to wetlands and found that there wouldn't be any, that there are no wetlands in this area. And that I'm not sure what your training in hydrology or recreation management is, Aaron, but I trust my staff.
I don't need a hydrology degree to know what a spring-fed stream looks like.
Make a motion to end discussion on the flood trail.
We have a motion to end the discussion on web trail. Is there a second? It's moved and seconded. Is that a item for discussion or not? I'll ask our attorney.
Yes, you can have debate on
Is
it.
there any discussion anyone would like to have? Councilmember Sullivan?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the comments have come up on both sides, and I think it'd be great if we did follow through on this discussion later and, set the record straight, as you said. But I do think it's good we brought it forward, but I think we can move on now.
Any other discussion?
I have no objection.
All right. In that case, I'll call the question. All those in favor of moving on from Frog Trail, please raise your hands. Opposed? Motion's carried. Was there anything else on your agenda?
I don't believe so, other than since it seems like there's folks that are interested in the room in Forest Service planning processes and how we make decisions. It's on the other end of the county, but I'll put a quick plug in for tomorrow night. We have an open house from 5 to 7 p.m. at the Breckenridge Recreation Center to talk about the Southern 10-mile recreation access plan. So a bunch of proposed changes in partnership with the town of Breckenridge and Summit County to work on access, some new trails, and just kind of trying to manage the amount of recreation that we have down in that Quandary, Blue Lakes, Spruce Creek, McCullough Gulch zone. About 240,000 visitors a year and 0 bathrooms. So hoping to get our hands around that. So if anybody's interested, 5 to 7 tomorrow, Rec Center.
I do have one other question. So there's a lot of feedback that has been coming to us as elected officials for Keystone, and as the mayor has mentioned, there is limited areas that we actually control. But what is the best avenue for folks that are looking to be involved? And I know you mentioned the open house at the Breck Rec Center tomorrow, but for a longevity perspective, what's the best avenue for a concerned person, whether in our town, unincorporated Summit County, or in another town in the county, to get in contact with your staff or share their opinion or give feedback?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the, email and phone number for our front desk are easily found on Google, and that's probably the easiest way. And then the front desk person can get it to the right member of our staff, depending on what the project is. I will definitely say that comments and concerns and suggestions are most helpful while we're in that planning process. The earlier, the better. It's hard for us when we've gotten, 90% the way of a plan, and then someone comes in with a comment that we've never heard before to kind of backtrack. Sometimes we can, but sometimes if, folks have committed a lot of time and resources and we've got a solid plan. So anyways, earlier in the process, the better. Post implementation, obviously, not usually possible to change what's happening on the ground with land management. So that's definitely, I would say just, be on the lookout, and that while the schedule of proposed actions is supposed to go away, as of now, you can still sign up on our website to get on that email list so that you get, every single project if you want, or projects in specific areas. But yeah, we're always around. We love in-person people coming in and asking questions too.
Is it the info@fdrd.org? Or,
No, that's the Friends of the Dillon Ranger District.
so when I Google email for Dillon Ranger District, Colorado, that's what comes up. Is there a different one that you know off the top of your head that we could have included in our notes? And sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's totally fine. If you give me 2 seconds, or if you try like Dillon Ranger District White River, that might be.
sm.fs.drdm mailroom@usda.gov.
That's the one. It's really catchy.
Yeah, flows off the tongue. All right, thank you.
I think the town would like to establish a very good working relationship with you. That was the primary purpose of you being here, not necessarily to talk specifically Frog Trail. And the town has had some success working with you. You mentioned the one meeting that we had having to do with the closure areas associated with snowshoe hare. And I'll have to say the Forest Service listened to us. And we worked and we were very successful in working that. And that's where getting us involved early with you, I think, pays dividends on both sides. So again, thank you for coming today. And
Mayor.
After we close, would you be willing to, out in the hallway, answer any questions folks may have?
I actually do have to run. I'm getting married on Monday and I have to go meet my wedding planner at 5:30.
I understand that. Karen?
First, congratulations.
Thank you.
Second, I echo the mayor's comments. And third, excited to hear about that South 10 Mile project. One of the comments that we received an email from a constituent was on that line around trailheads and bathrooms at Keystone Gulch. Is that anywhere on a list somewhere of things to look at?
So we've been working with the towns, and this was again an effort that was kind of started before Keystone became a town. So it's a little bit making sure, to your point, that we're working together. We've been working with the county and the towns of Breckenridge and Frisco and Silverthorne, and a little bit town of Dillon as well, to look at trailhead access countywide and kind of come up with, where are the trailheads not big enough? Where are they the right size already? Where do we need to add more facilities? And have kind of prioritized, again, looking countywide with those groups as well. I can't remember off the top of my head where Keystone Gulch falls into that list, but it's been part of that countywide project that we'd be happy to, kind of meet with the Open Space Advisory Committee and sort of talk about, sort of where we got before Keystone became a town and how we could, that process is kind of, almost at its end, but try to incorporate the town as much as we can there as well.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There was Councilmember Kerr.
I didn't realize you also were on a time crunch, and I don't want,
No worries.
I understand that, don't want to get in the way. I sort of was looking forward to hearing you talk about the Tenderfoot Meadows open space.
So that's Summit County open space. That's not Forest Service.
Okay, good, okay. Because I
So you don't want to
don't
talk
want to know,
about this.
I don't want to miss information you had planned to give us. In the meantime, however, is there a place online where we could find this county-wide trails access project?
No, because we haven't, because the way that we've been kind of working through that process over the last, and honestly, maybe Catherine would be willing to speak to that, just because that was one that was also sort of taking place while I was not acting district ranger. And so the district ranger out of Bianchi really has held most of that project. So I don't frankly know as much about it as I should yet. But that's
Let me tell you what I'm asking. So I liked the idea, everything you described about how to influence what you're all thinking. And I don't know how we would influence that if we can't find that.
So there's nothing that's been like, so the Southern 10 Mile is kind of the first project to come out of that. Basically, that process it was all pre-planning. It was just working directly with the county and with the towns to really think about sort of like what's the wish list from the land manager's perspective. And then it would be, the idea was that like project by project, we'd kind of take these bite-sized chunks out of it and go out to the public and really present a thought out, project proposal and see what they thought. So there's no like public facing county master plan, because that wasn't really the goal of that planning process, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item is a presentation by Summit County Open Space and Trails. And at this point, they can address 10-foot metals. Probably that's better acoustic.
Thank you for letting me go before Jordan's really great visuals. Jordan's the master. Good PowerPoint. Thank you guys. Thank you. So good. All right. Well, thank you for having us. I'm Catherine King. I'm the director of the Summit County Space and Trails program and our department. And I'm here with Jordan Mead, who's a senior resource specialist in our department as well. And we really appreciate your interest in learning more about what the County Open Space and Trails program does. And thanks for having us. So I'll just give a little bit of background on the formation of the department, kind of what our general scope of work is, and then Jordan's going to talk more specifically about tenderfoot meadows and the management plan there and the wildlife closure there. So let's see, Open Space and Trails, we've been around since the mid-90s. We are funded by property taxes that have been approved by the voters a number of times over the years. And we have protected about 18,000 acres of land throughout Summit County in all 4 basins. And the criteria we use to protect land or decide what land we're going to conserve as open space is up here on the screen. We also have a 13-member Open Space Advisory Council. It's a very large committee. I don't recommend a 13. They're all wonderful, and we love how much interest we have, but 13-member council is quite large and a little bit difficult to herd those cats sometimes, but they do.
We beat you.
And what?
We're at 14.
Oh, you're 14. Oh,
We
you're
beat
one
you.
of us. Congratulations. But they make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on property acquisitions and on open space management activities. The mission of the Open Space and Trails program is to identify, protect, and manage open spaces, trails, and trailheads to preserve and maintain Summit County's rural mountain character, unique natural areas, and high quality of life for residents and guests. And over time, similar to a lot of open space programs, we've kind of shifted our focus from acquiring a lot of land, and that was what we did for a long time primarily. And then lo and behold, we have all these assets, and we want to protect the natural resources contained in those assets and manage how people want to use them. So these days, we're spending a lot more of our time on management in addition to acquisition. And something that reflects that on the next slide is our most recent master plan effort, which we adopted in 2022. We had not updated our Open Space and Trails master plan for about 25 years. Our initial master plan was heavily focused on land acquisition. It didn't have any mention hardly at all about trails or the rec path. It really was focused on land conservation. And we went through a process of about a year and a half, a lot of stakeholder and public input into drafting that master plan. And one thing we heard over and over again from the public that we really tried to incorporate throughout the plan was that they wanted to see a balance of conservation and recreation. And that's really in everything we try to do in the Open Space and Trails Department. Recreation and conservation. So within that master plan, there are 3 key categories that kind of capture our vision for the future of the Open Space and Trails Department, and that's conserve, connect, and collaborate. And within each of those categories, we have a number of goals, policies, and actions outlined that hopefully will help us achieve the vision outlined in the master plan. And I'll give you a few examples of kind of what we do in each of those categories so that you have a better understanding of what the program does. Go to the next one. So under conserve, as I mentioned, we've conserved about 18,000 acres of land throughout the county. Some of that is land we outright own, like fee simple acquisition. A lot of it, particularly in the northern part of the county, is conservation easements.
on agricultural lands, maybe open space dedications or trail easements, recreational access easements. The conserve part of the plan also covers ecosystem management. So that's everything we do related to protecting wildlife habitat, enhancing wildlife habitat, protecting water quality, and doing things like river restoration, mine reclamation, forest health activities and wildfire mitigation on open space, taking care of noxious weeds on open space and trails, that kind of thing. In the connect category, obviously that's primarily recreation. We manage about 100 miles of natural surface trails throughout the county. We also manage the paved rec path in the unincorporated county, which is about 40 miles of paved pathway. 36 trailhead parking lots throughout Summit County and 50 or more neighborhood access portals. And really, we've been fortunate through a strong relationship with the planning department and policies in our land use code to be able to protect open space and public access to public lands throughout the development review process. When working with developers coming in that are proposing new projects, we're always offered a seat at the table to discuss how we might continue to provide open space benefits even in the face of new development. In the collaborate space, kind of as Amanda alluded to, we work really closely with our partners at the Forest Service and the various towns around the county. We want to ensure there's kind of a cohesive management of our checkerboard landscape of public lands around Summit County. And that would include recent planning efforts like the STRAP, the Southern 10-Mile Recreation Access Plan that Amanda mentioned, as well as the RAMI, which is the Recreation Access Management Initiative that she also mentioned, which is the one where we're looking at trailheads all around the county, kind of figuring out where our biggest problems are and developing a toolbox of tools that we can use to solve some of those capacity issues we're seeing around Summit County. And that's been that collaborative stakeholder effort between towns and the Forest Service that we'd be glad to have you all participate in, or your open space board participate in, now that all are a town. We have 5 full-time staff in the open space department, as well as 3 seasonals in the summer. And we definitely heavily rely on our partners to do a lot of our work around the county, as well as volunteers. We have a great group of volunteers that help on the rec path, with natural surface trail projects, maintaining trailheads, things like that. So I know that was quick. Happy to answer any questions now or later about just in general the work that we do, but otherwise I'll turn it over to Jordan, who's going to talk about the Tenderfoot Meadows management plan, where again, we're really doing our best to try to balance that public desire for balancing, or the public desire to balance recreation and conservation.
All right, thanks, Catherine. Mayor Riley, Council, thank you for having us. As Catherine mentioned, I'm Jordan Mead. I'm a senior resource specialist with Summit County Open Space and Trails. I've been with the department for a little over 5 years now, and I am also a Keystone resident. I live in West Hills and have been there since it was built about 5 years ago in phase 2. So happy to be here. Yeah, we're going to talk about Tenderfoot Meadows Open Space Management Plan. You can go to the next slide. So just the generals about Tenderfoot Meadows Open Space. It's approximately 97 acres adjacent to Highway 6 between Keystone and Dillon. It was purchased in 3 separate transactions between 1999 and 2001. And the open space values that were identified at the time of purchase were, which are come from that first slide that Catherine presented, were buffers, so buffering development between Dillon and Keystone, and extensions of public lands. It's nice to have some rain. So this is adjacent to county landfill property and close to a lot of national forest lands as well. Unique lands, we're going to talk about the unique habitat that is on the Tenderfoot Meadows open space in just a little bit, and view corridor, so maintaining that open appearance and the view sheds there. You can go to the next slide. This is showing a map of Tenderfoot Meadows and the surrounding area. Tenderfoot Meadows is the 3 parcels to the northwest of the kind of bluish property, which is owned by Denver Water. Two of those parcels that were purchased are on the northeast side of Highway 6, and we call that the North Meadow. And then a smaller portion of Tenderfoot Meadows is on the southwest side of Highway 6, adjacent to Dillon Reservoir. The primary motivation for the purchase of this property, like I said, is to protect the view shed and the undisturbed community separators between the towns of Dillon and Keystone. Uses of this property shall be limited to activities that maintain and promote the natural open appearance of the Sage Meadow and balance conservation of natural resources with opportunities for recreation. And Tenderfoot Meadows and the adjacent landfill property, which is everything that you see in kind of the tan brown color just to the north of the purple, is the county landfill, and that is home to the scrap trail system, which we're very familiar with. Parts of Oregon, Scrappy, Buzztail, Snake River Bluffs, the Sage Trail. All those trails are built and maintained by Summit County Open Space and Trails Department. The Dillon Disc Golf Course is nearby, the Summit County Off-Road Riders Moto Track, and the archery range. And as you all are, I'm sure, familiar, is a very popular spring and summer recreation destination. It's also home to unique undeveloped south-facing sagebrush meadows that are south of I-70 and east of Highway 6, and we're going to come back to that in a little bit. Like I mentioned, all of those lands in tan color are zoned for landfill uses, and I think this is just a good opportunity to make everyone aware that the recreational amenities on the landfill property, including the scrap trail system, are all operated with the knowledge that in the future, those are going to go away as the current landfill cells reach their capacity and the end of their life, and the landfill will eventually move into new areas to the west, where those trails and other recreation amenities are. And we're starting to see this. You probably have seen the new road and bridge parking pad and storage area that is being built in the former archery range location, as you can see from Highway 6. You can go to the next slide, please. So the Tenderfoot Meadows original management plan was written in 2002, shortly after the property was purchased. And in 2022, our Open Space Advisory Council did direct us to update that plan to both reflect the current conditions, since none of the trails or other recreation amenities that are on this property and the neighboring landfill were reflected in that original management plan, and to incorporate the open space master plan goals from that 2022 open space and trails master plan. Go to the next slide. So through about an 18-month process, we did go ahead and update that plan. In May of 2022, we had an initial stakeholder meeting with our adjacent landowners and land managers. So that was the town of Dillon, the Summit County Landfill Director, Aaron Byrne, the Forest Service, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, Denver Water, and the Summit County Off-Road Riders who manage the Moto Track. We then did a lot of research, desktop analysis, drafting in the winter of 2022, and in the spring of 2023, between May 31st and June 10th, we did on-site surveys of property users, and we got 54 responses. A majority of those people that we talked to were frequent property users. 46% of respondents indicated that they visited the property multiple times per week, and an additional 36% indicated that they visited multiple times per year, so fairly frequent visitors. We did a public scoping, so kind of mirroring the Forest Service process, trying to get this plan out for review. That went from May 20th to June 16th, 2023. We sent that directly to a number of local HOAs in Summit Cove and in the western part of Keystone, the landfill staff, town of Dillon, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the Forest Service, as well as local nonprofits, including SCOMBA, SCORE, and at the time, the Keystone Citizens League. We did a press release with a link to our draft plan, and information about a public open house that we hosted, as well as instructions on how to comment on that plan. And we did receive 8 direct email comments during that scoping period. And on June 14th, 2023, we held a public open house at the County Commons in Frisco, and we received 8 additional survey responses. So we had those same surveys at the open house, and we had open-ended comment cards, and received 8 of those in addition. The plan was reviewed by our Open Space Advisory Council 3 times during the process over that 18 months to make changes and revisions prior to being recommended for adoption. And finally, staff presented the plan to the Board of County Commissioners at a public work session in September of 2023. And it was read and approved in a regular public meeting in November of 2023 prior to being adopted. Next slide, please. So the key outcomes from that newly amended plan were the seasonal wildlife closure, which we're going to talk about more in just a moment. Criteria for new trail development, which helps OSAC and staff determine if and when new trails might be appropriate in the scrap trail system. And what we really heard from the public was a desire for new trails, despite low levels of user conflict. So people are getting along pretty well out there, but I think as in most places in Summit County, there's a high demand for recreation. And we are acting on this plan, and OSAC at our previous meeting did approve a new downhill mountain bike specific trail to parallel the Sage Trail, which will be built and maintained by SCOMBA. On the other end, while trying to balance the demand for recreation and building new trails, last winter we did institute a new seasonal wildlife closure, and you can go to the next slide. And this photo is just showing the abundance of deer and elk tracks that we have photographed when we've been out at the property in past seasons. I think this was from November 2023. You can go to the next slide. So why is this closure important? As I mentioned earlier, Tenderfoot Meadows and the adjacent undeveloped landfill property have this unique south-facing meadows that provide critical winter habitat for the Tenderfoot mountain elk herd. This is one of and Tenderfoot Meadows is the little purple square that's down on the kind of lower left part of the screen. And if you look at this map, I-70 and Highway 6 form basically a habitat island around Tenderfoot Meadow going up to the Continental Divide at Loveland Pass. And so this is a very isolated habitat. CPW did confirm when we met with them and elicited their comments that the elk herd from their counts and from their observations is declining, and that we're not seeing a lot of migration across Highway 6 and I-70 in the winter. So these elk are really our residents of Tenderfoot Mountain year round. And so this winter habitat is really vital. This habitat has lower snow depths and easier access to forage, which provides food sources for pregnant cows. So this overwinter, these elk are reproducing and they're growing calves. And we know that less disturbance throughout that season increases the chances of successful reproduction and a sustainable population. And you can go to the next slide. Like I said, this seasonal wildlife closure was recommended by CPW and OSAC and eventually adopted by BOCC. It goes from December 1st to April 1st annually, which during that time, our trail counters at this open space counted during the times that when it was still open that there were about 20 counts on our trails per month, which is less than 1 user per day on average for our counts on those trails. And use is concentrated, as you might imagine, in May, June, and September out at this property. It protects that winter elk range, which you see as the diagonal dash. These are very generalized habitat patches by CPW, and our camera evidence does show that the elk are using the entirety of the Tenderfoot Meadows open space. And our survey respondents, who again were frequent property users, generally supported this. Over 75% of respondents were either very or somewhat supportive of a seasonal wildlife closure at Tenderfoot Meadows through our surveys. And you go to the next slide. And these are just some photos that show, and this is difficult to see, but yeah, really difficult to see on these screens, but no, it's fine. There's a couple of elk here. There's several more here and another couple here and some in the background that are just a slight eye shine. So this was actually adjacent to that Denver Water Tenderfoot Meadows property boundary close to the Snake River Bluffs Trail. The elk really like that green gentian. You can see those spikes, especially if you are out recreating right now. They're like these 6-foot tall plants. They really prefer those and we've seen them grazing on those pretty frequently. We have signage, we have the closure gates that you've probably noticed. And the other benefit that we get is these are really high demand early season trails, but people are often using them when conditions are really marginal and there's a lot of snow left on the trails and causing trail damage, which then takes us a lot of staff time and effort to repair. And so this also allows us to keep access limited until those trails are in the condition that is sustainable for use. I had a couple of videos, but they're not going to come through on these slides because this is a PDF version, but you can go to the next slide and you just see this is another image from a similar video. And on the last slide shows a couple of elk on the property. This is around 10 in the morning. And so I think that there's kind of this thought that these animals are only here during the nighttime hours. And we do have a pretty significant amount of evidence that they're using this area to bed down during the daytime and are spending a lot of time on this property. And yeah, so that's the Tenderfoot Meadows Open Space Management Plan and our seasonal wildlife closure and some of the reasoning that went along with that. And we're happy to take any questions both on the program in general and on this in specifically.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Quick question. I'm very conscientious about the breeding season. The dump's right there. That's 365. I mean, how does that impact the herd? It seems like that'd be a much bigger impact than one person per day going through.
Yeah, and that habitat is no longer available to them. The studies that I've seen show that the elk usually will shy away from human activity in the 200 to 500 yards range. And so there's plenty of habitat on this property and on the adjacent landfill that is well outside of that range. And frankly, we've also seen the elk feeding very close to Highway 6, despite that the disturbance from the vehicles. And
But eventually we're moving the dump west.
Yeah, and at the same time, all of those trails will, like I mentioned earlier, will also go away at that same time.
And the elk probably.
And the elk probably too, which will be a sad day.
Okay.
But so, I mean, when you look at thank you, when you look at the map, the Tenderfoot area is a minuscule portion compared to the dump.
Yep.
Thank you for going back to that. But I'm with Councilmember Sullivan. I just don't understand why limiting access to this small area is really making any difference.
Well, we, like I said, did work closely with the landfill staff, and as the Open Space and Trails program, we also manage the trails that would not exist otherwise. And so the closure, and this was part of our discussions with the landfill staff, was that the trails that we manage on the landfill are also subject to that wildlife closure as well.
Respectfully, I don't think that answered the question. I don't understand how restricting access to this area is really doing anything if there's this highly disturbed area in the landfill.
I think maybe the survey data that we have and the camera data that we show that elk are significantly using this area. I think the collar data that CPW also has that shows this is severe elk winter range support a closure on this property. And in addition, as Jordan's mentioning, the trail network on the landfill. So it really isn't just the purple of Tenderfoot Meadows, since the closure is effective on the entire trail system that does go into the tan gray landscape of of the landfill as well, it really does effectively protect additional habitat in that zone.
Okay, thank you.
Member Permit.
Following up on Councilmember Hagenau's questions and Councilmember Sullivan's, I guess like you mentioned that, yeah, there's some landfill trails you've closed and some of them are literally inches from the landfill fence where there are, heavy machinery working. And I guess when you're talking about some of the photos you've showed, you just showed us a photo of all of the elk and deer activity in that area in 2022 when you had above average recreation that year because it was there was still some fallout from the pandemic. So if all of that presence was there when there was the arguably minimal human presence from your study time, and if they tolerate heavy machinery just feet away, I'm still struggling to see the argument here. And almost all the pictures, you showed the first picture in the daylight hours of an elk in this area. I continue to struggle to see where an animal that they're more nocturnal than they are diurnal, or they're crepuscular technically. I've never seen an elk in all of my years there, but I have seen where they bed down. They do bed down there. But anyone who knows elk activity, any hunter knows that as soon as the day's up, they're not out in the open meadows. They're in the thick timber because that's how they hide from the predators. I'm continuing to struggle where the argument here is for an area that's bounded by Highway 6, an active dump, storage sites, the moto track, the shooting range, the archery range. How is protecting this still relative postage stamp going to make a difference for an elk herd that ranges over, what's the area affected by the closure?
The acreage affected by the closure?
About 300 acres.
300 acres out of roughly 30,000 acres of elk winter range that's on the north side of 6 and 70. So like 1%. How is that?
I think a few things. First of all, we probably should have clarified this during the presentation, but those photos are all from after the closure. None of those photos and videos are from when the closure isn't in place. So those aren't from 2022. Those are post the wildlife closure. They're from this past winter that show that elk are using the area during the closure. I don't know if elk don't use the area during the day, then I don't really know how to explain the camera evidence that we have for elk on camera during the day there. I don't have an explanation for that. I'm sorry. And then I think even if we know that perhaps long-term, this elk herd is going to continue to struggle, we felt like, and our advisory council also felt, that user numbers are low enough here during the closure period that it justified putting the closure in place. We didn't feel like 20 counts a month was a whole lot of impact. Their wildlife closures are very common in other counties. We're very new to them in Summit County. This is the first one we've ever tried. And I think the general consensus was that the benefits outweighed the cost currently to the wildlife population that is using this area. And in the future, we always have the option to reevaluate that depending on what the elk herd does, depending on what happens at the landfill. But currently that was the decision that was made. And I think based on the wildlife camera data that we're seeing, it's my opinion as staff that closure still makes a lot of sense.
Am I correct that the proper way to address the concerns in this area is through the Open Space and Trails Committee and the BOCC?
Certainly. So yeah, any members of the public or council members that have concerns about the management plan or management actions are welcome to come to our OSAC meeting and provide public comment. They can also reach out to the Board of County Commissioners during their public comment periods, reaching out to open space staff. We have a general open space at summitcountyco.gov email where people can always send comments.
Is there any other question?
Quick comment.
Yeah.
I would just like to thank you for the work that you guys do, given your small staff. As someone who served on the Snake River Planning Commission, I found a few opportunities where you guys were involved, your input, your feedback to be very insightful, very helpful. I think it's
great that we are very fortunate that we have open space in our community that set us apart and give us some buffer zone. And I think, as you've mentioned, I think in our last two presentations, it's clearly been presented that there's lots of opportunities for not only the town, the council, but public to be involved with the two groups that have been in front of us, to be involved, to attend meetings, to get on email blasts. So I think this is a good opportunity to us to not only glean information, but I think there's opportunities going forward for everyone to become more involved and more aware, and the partnership has always been our goal. So thank you.
And thanks to Councilmember Parmet for coming to some of our OSAC meetings so far and providing comments as either a Keystone resident before incorporation or now as a council member. So.
Yeah, and I would encourage our staff to work closely with the OSAC as well. And I think you probably already have started that process as we are going forward with our Trails and Open Space Advisory Committee. Again, thank you very much for coming in today. Aaron?
I did have a couple other questions about the survey. When you were doing.
Aaron, can we address that offline?
So I think that you made an excellent point, Mr. Mayor, that the proper way or maybe the best way for people to bring this up is through open space and trails. But the reality is that people bring it up to their elected officials. And so I have a question. So on the surveys, when you're doing user intercepts, where were you doing the user intercepts?
We were at the Tenderfoot, the cemetery trailhead.
Mm-hmm.
We had staff at the intersection of Sage and Tenderfoot Meadows Access and Snake River Bluff, so just on the north side of the underpass at Highway 6. And then we also had staff at the intersection of Oro Grande, Buff's Tail, and Sage Trail, that final four-way section up there. So trying to cover some of those different access points.
Cool, thank you. And did any of the people who said they were okay with the winter closure indicate that they were actually winter users?
Good question. About 20% of people who we talked to said they were winter users. And I could definitely follow up with that data, but I don't have it in my presentation or off the top of my head. But I did look at that percentage when we were doing when we did the surveys.
Okay, thank you. I was curious about that.
We did ask about seasonality, so I do have that data.
Cool, much appreciated.
Thank you very much for coming in today, and we'll move on to the next topic. With that, I'll turn it over to the town manager for discussion of financials.
And I will turn it over to our financial director.
All right, Becky Fox, Financial Director. So you have the financials, so follow my notes in the packet. And do you prefer for me to go over them with you, or do you just want us to open it up for questions and comments? You might have.
Is the council comfortable with just going with questions?
I am, because we've reviewed.
Everyone, all right, let's go ahead. Any questions? Councilmember Sullivan.
Yeah, we heard from other towns that sales are down. It seems like we actually had a pretty good season, that they're up year over year. Is that an anomaly? I mean, I'm very pleased. Why is that? Great. The staff.
So there's definitely some nuances that go with the sales tax collections overall. Just so council knows, I have worked very hard in making sure that all of our businesses that do business out of Keystone are actually remitting their sales tax to us rather than some of them have been going to other jurisdictions.
So is that the main reason for the bump?
It's a little bit of the reason for the bump. Overall, like for June, it's sales increased in our town.
Okay.
So, I mean, we only have a year of historical data, so it's kind of hard right now to predict a trend. So we're just kind of going off of month by month just to kind of see if that trend continues or if it'll taper off or.
Well, I would just comment, I mean, it looks great for Keystone. It's like we're doing better than a lot of our other town colleagues that are forced to make tough decisions because they're gone the other way. So I just didn't know why that was.
I think one other reason is towns like Silverthorne projected a 3% increase this year. We projected flat.
I think too, us being a very small town, it kind of helps because our sales are concentrated to a very small area rather than being broad. I think for the most part, just being a little more diligent with how they spend their money. So we'll keep looking at this month and see if that trend continues or, but as far as budget for next year, we're projecting flat.
Okay.
Even though we have a new business that's going to open up.
Councilmember Kerr.
I'm going to follow up on Councilmember, shoot, what's your last name, Sullivan? Questions. You talked about how we're a little more tight as far as geography is concerned, but that's also true for across the calendar. And so if we have pulled in 55% of what we budgeted at the halfway mark, I'm kind of concerned because those two halves before and after June 30th are not equal. It's typical, given that we don't have a lot of background data, but it's likely that we pull in more sales tax during the January through March period than we are going to see in the November, December period. So I recognize that you're watching this closely. What is your assessment of how that will work out?
With all the data that we have in front of us, we predict that we're going to be flat with what we projected. December is a good month for us. November, it'll pick up, but then we have some slow months coming in front of us. We're 55% of our budget, and that's through
the end of June, halfway.
Well, that's today. So yeah, halfway. So we're halfway because it was June. So we'll keep looking at that and adjust if necessary. But so far, all the collections look promising.
Historically, we shouldn't even quite be at 55% through the end of June, the way it works out. Our numbers, our projections, since we're up a little in June, if we're flat, we will be up at the end of the year on our projections. We didn't just take a number and split it out over 12 months. Our projection was based on a month by month analysis.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. Thank you. This is another, I don't understand this. You wrote that June's Keystone lodging tax saw a decrease of 4% when compared with industry lodging sales tax in June 2024. I don't get that.
So since we didn't start collecting lodging tax until January of this year, the only historical data that we have to compare it to is sales tax for the lodging industry, which is also 2% sales tax.
Okay.
Countywide.
Good,
Does that make
good
sense?
answer. Absolutely. Thank
So
you.
that number was based on a countywide analysis, not a Keystone unique analysis.
Keystone numbers.
Yeah, Keystone.
The Keystone lodging folks, all right.
Yeah, by industry. Because I can take the sales tax data that we get from the Colorado Department of Revenue and I can filter out the lodging establishments.
Perfect. Thank you. Nice work.
Any other questions? Anyone? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is discussion of penalties and fines, Mr. Town Manager.
Your Honor, since we also have this on the evening agenda, can I recommend we push this back to the end of discussions? There are some other discussion issues I'd like to certainly get to.
Does council have any objection to just combining this discussion with the resolution consideration of towns and fines later?
It's a general rule. I'd like to have discussed it before we're voting.
Well,
Tonight, okay. Well, more than 5 minutes before.
Okay. All right, Mr. Town Manager, then in that case, go on to natural medicine.
I will pass this on to our town attorney.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm going to provide a brief overview of Colorado's natural medicine regulations and then discuss what local governments can do related to natural medicine businesses. Just to orient everybody from the start, the town can regulate natural medicine businesses through zoning, time, place, and manner restrictions, essentially. So just a little bit of background. In 2022, Colorado voters approved the Natural Medicine Health Act. And what this did is legalized supervised therapeutic use of certain natural medicines. Right now, we're looking at the natural medicine called psilocybin. The Natural Medicine Health Act also implemented other regulations by the state, and healing centers, cultivation facilities, and testing labs all have to be regulated by the state. Individuals who want to administer natural medicine also have to get licensed to do it. What this Natural Medicine Health Act said is that local governments cannot ban these businesses, but you can put in place regulations related to the operations. So under state law, Keystone can regulate time, place, and manner. Time really looks at business hour operations. Place is looking at where the businesses are located. So what zone districts, also potentially you could implement distance requirements from schools and residences. Under state law, there is already a distance requirement in place for 1,000 feet from schools. In your packet in the staff report, there are some proposed regulations. Now, to say, first off, there have been a handful of municipalities who have adopted regulations related to natural medicine. A lot of those municipalities have adopted place regulations that limit these business operations to industrial zones, and also place the healing centers in areas where medical facilities are located. Keystone is a little bit unique and unlike other municipalities in that you don't have an industrial zone district. You don't really have a location that is, industrial zone districts are typically set back and apart from residential areas, even apart from other commercial business areas. But again, you don't have that luxury. So the regulations before you tonight propose that the zone be located in the B1 area, and there was a packet or a handout that was provided in the packet to show you where the B1 zone district is. Then the proposals also talk about operations. Very important is anybody who wants to operate in the town must comply with the state regulations. All businesses must be licensed and follow Colorado's really strict regulations. They must be indoors in a permitted building, no outdoor cultivation, and then any odor, smoke, or light must not be detectable. So that's an overview, and I'm happy to answer any questions, and your community development director is also available for questions.
Questions, Councilmember Sullivan?
Real quick, I hear that, I understood the schools, 1,000 feet, but is there no rule about a house or a condo or, but you can set back from that or set?
You can allow for distance regulations from residential areas. That is permitted.
Because the reason I ask is I look at the areas that we have, all of them have condos or multifamily units in those distinct areas.
And
If we
that's
said
not
1,000
something- yeah.
feet away, then we wouldn't have any.
Effectively prohibiting,
And we can't do that.
correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Kerr.
I'm going to follow on to what I think I think he was going. So right now, if we were to authorize these in any B1 area, that would mean an authorization to be above the businesses in Gateway, right above, right next to,
Could be in the businesses in the gateway.
which are, my point is the dwelling units are right above.
Oh, yes.
We're talking, it's very difficult. There's no big separation. So let me ask this. If an HOA were to be approached with the option of putting a natural medicine business within their area, and yeah. Is Oro Grande an HOA and a commercial? Looked like it was in the business area. Maybe it's the wrong
Grande
one.
is strictly residential as far as use. As far as existing use.
Might be Oro Grande
Are you talking
lodges
the red to
and the
the far
Tenderfoot
left?
Lodge look like they're both in our B1 zone.
Yes.
Right.
So it does, the B1 does allow residential use.
Okay, so if a business was interested in going to a B1 zone where there is residential use, could the HOA, for example, for Tenderfoot Lodge or for Oro Grande Lodge condos override this zoning and say, but not in our area, but not in our HOA?
Who has the ability to rent the spaces?
Well,
Commercial spaces.
There's no commercial spaces in those buildings.
Okay, so.
But they're in the B1 zone. That's my point. So right now, we have not identified that we're going to say that you can only be in an existing commercial area. They want to might want to build something.
So I had a question on this follow, like kind of digging.
Perhaps you were going to clarify this?
It's an interesting way of looking at it. Quite frankly, based on where the B1 zoning districts currently are, there's really, all right, so you have Oro Grande, you have that strip on the north side, which is basically a ditch. And then you have the Christie Sports and Snake River Saloon, which is its own piece. And then you have Gateway.
Right.
So in my opinion, from a realistic standpoint, number one, statutorily have to allow it somewhere. And without further residential distance requirements, the most likely place is either in Gateway or Snake River Saloon, Christie Sports properties.
Most likely based on what?
Based on the use being allowed and most appropriate.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to the question. Oro Grande Lodge condos in B1 zone. And we are looking at a proposal that says it's authorized in a B1 zone. Roger, makes sense. However, could Oro Grande Lodge condos then say, we object to that?
Yes.
Yes.
And would they have standing here? Okay.
Well,
I mean, the other thing you could do is also prohibit the uses in a residential.
But we haven't yet talked about that.
Well, you don't have to, that's different from a distance.
We haven't talked about either yet.
Okay.
So if you could clarify, so one of the proposals that was not from staff, but your, what do we call it? Staff report identified that some towns have said at least 1,000 feet from a residential dwelling. Are you also saying another option is to say cannot be in a residential dwelling?
Yes.
Even if it's in a B1 zone?
Correct.
So,
Okay.
so my question was going to be, it seems like we are, besides, as staff pointed out, two very specific locations, we're banning this everywhere in town except for these two very specific locations. Is that allowed? Are we opening ourselves up to liability there?
No, I mean, you're allowing all the uses that are permitted under state law in those two areas, that the areas are very limited. Yeah, it is. It's not, you're not really set up for these types of uses.
Okay. And then I did have a follow-up question. And sorry if this sounds silly, but do ski schools count as schools?
I don't think so. I'd have to look at the definition, but
Okay.
I would say probably not.
Okay. And then same thing for non-for-profits like Keystone Science School? Is that
I think so. Again, I'd have to look, but
Okay.
I think it's specific to the schools.
I don't think this area is within 1,000 feet of either of those. I'm just more curious.
And how is KSS zoned? Sorry, science.
But that's well past 1,000 feet from
But we haven't,
this location.
nobody's proposed 1,000 feet. We've just said some towns have done that.
No, isn't it
It's state law. Unless you want to do less.
Schools, okay,
Yeah, but not residential.
okay. So one of the things we've heard tonight is we could ban it from residential dwellings, even if in a B1 zone. Another option would be to ban it in residential or keep it 1,000 feet from a dwelling unit. A third thing may be to consider,
Yeah, that would preclude the use.
there's no way to make that happen. So that's like the town of Fountain in
Physically
here.
Make that 1,000 square foot from a residential unit functionally work. I do
Okay,
not know how
that's why I wanted to know. So the other possibility that's essentially on the table is no restrictions. Now, if I read it right, Frisco has only limited it from distance to schools.
Yeah, that is.
Did not require that it be in a commercial zone. Have you, perhaps in a mayor-manager meeting, John, have you heard any anecdotal information as to how that's going? And quite frankly, we might not even have any interest in that business as yet.
We haven't discussed it, but I would think it's probably still barred in residential areas because it's, unless they allow medical centers. They didn't have to specifically exempt it in the mushroom law if these types of facilities are exempted in the zoning code. Any sort of medical facility. So I assume that's correct. If a neighborhood is limited to strictly residential.
It can be permitted in residential.
Yeah, I know it can be permitted, but can it also, can medical facilities be banned in residential areas?
Well, that's not a question
Well, no, it's a commercial business. So I'm saying you have zones that don't allow commercial businesses regardless. And I don't know if.
Oh, you're saying the fact that they did not outlaw it is moot because it's already a business that can't be in residential.
I haven't discussed this. I don't know if there's separate rules on medical facilities in residential areas.
I'll tell you, I don't know enough about these natural medicine businesses to have any concern. But I just want to be clear. It looks like we are saying that they will be right next to or right below residential areas. And I just want to be clear about that. going
I
in.
mean, we could arguably say it's allowed anywhere where commercial businesses are allowed to. I don't know how that would impact.
That would, I mean, then we'd have to look at each PUD.
Yeah.
To figure out where commercial is allowed in each PUD. But we could do
That would mean we would potentially be putting it into all of our heavy tourist areas of River Run, Lakeside Village.
Yes,
Unless ski schools count as schools.
unless expressly prohibited.
And
They don't.
I would agree.
I think it might be important to understand too, that this is not, you can't go into a business and purchase psilocybin. You have to be treated by a professional, licensed professional to get a treatment. So it's somebody going into an office. The way I understand it is a couple of day process. You go in for a consultation, you meet with the therapist, and then the next day you have your session, and it's a couple of hours. So it's different from other types of businesses that municipalities have regulated in the past, such as marijuana.
Phase one, that's all I'll say. It's phase one.
It is.
Question for, we're talking about a few communities here. Have we reached out to folks in these communities, these HOAs? I mean, do they know what we're thinking about? Is there any, we asked for comments or anything? I mean,
I mean, the individual properties?
oh, yeah, I'm thinking, gateway condos.
Not yet. Again, we are just initiating, well, continuing on with the introduction of this topic. The next step will be going to Planning Commission, and that will be a public hearing, and we will get the word out.
Okay.
And then they'll make a recommendation, and we'll notice again for town council.
Okay,
So, no.
this is kind of from my perspective, you guys have kind of limited to, we're obligated to do it right now, kind of I don't want to say this, but kind of a worst case scenario. But we are going to go through a broader process, talk to these folks, and we'll come back. If there's a real rebellion or if there's some issues we don't understand, then we can review it again. That's what you're asking for today.
Keep in mind, our intent is to comply. Obviously, there were concerns because of the moratorium, but our objective is to allow the use, which we're obligated to do, but also if it does have to happen, where are the appropriate locations?
Right.
So that's what we're attempting to do, and we're going to garner input, and maybe through the public process, we will hear some separation requirements or suggestions from residential use. I don't know. But what I don't want to happen is to preclude the use. I can't.
Understand.
Agreed, don't want to, don't need to, don't have the authority to. I'm kind of wondering why we're talking about it now before the plans and zoning commission take it up. My sense was there was a proposal, if we liked that, or the other option would be to bounce it to the planning commission. And are you coming to us first to get our general sense before the planning and zoning commission discuss it? It seems backwards.
Well, excellent question. And quite frankly, the town attorney and I kind of looked at each other like, why are we doing this again? But the reason being is we wanted, number one, over and over, we've heard, garner public input. Don't do anything. And basically, we're treating this as a work session, just make sure, number one, to keep you in the loop. So anything that we heard tonight, we'll consider and get this code amendment to the next step, which is Bright Commission. So really it was to keep council informed.
And that's valid.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilmember Hagan.
So I had a few questions on, let me just get to them. So if we were to look at putting or allowing this use in any commercial space within the rules of the schools and all this kind of stuff, or anywhere else a medical center would be, are we able to put blockers in if a phase 2 or 3 gets to a dispensary level service
Well, it's not going to get to dispensary level service. So phase one, the voters approve this, it's not for sale. The phase two is different types of drugs. That's what phase two is, and phase three is different types of drugs, not sales.
But all still following that medical prescriptive process you
Yes.
explained?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there,
And you can always change your code. You can always make amendments. You can always change your code. If you find that something's not working and it's a problem, then we come back and we look at it and we redo it. I mean, this is a little challenging because it's a new thing and you don't have a lot of information. You know, the state has been fortunate in that Oregon did this first. And so the state of Colorado has learned a lot from Oregon. And their regulations are based on lessons that Oregon learned. So that's good. But as far as municipalities regulating it, it is a new area.
thank you.
Thanks for the lay down.
Ready to move on.
All right. Not a lot of guidance.
Well, I can honestly say we've kept you in the loop. So,
Jack,
we'll get to the next, step. And, you'll see it after that.
The next item is discussion of the council vacancy. And with that, I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Okay, on August 22nd, Councilmember Valerie Pistet submitted a notification of resignation from her position as a council member. This clearly creates a vacancy in the town council. Councilmember Pistet is serving a 2-year term. Her term was set to expire in April of 2026. We need guidance on how you want staff to go forward with this. This is the 3rd time we've had a vacancy. The town council has 2 options. They can order a special election, or they can fill the vacancy by appointment. If it's filled by appointment, whoever's filled in that position will be up for election in the April of 2026 election. In the case of Councilmember Fistet's position, it will be an open position in the April of 2026 election, regardless of the appointment. For people who are appointed to a 4-year term, the election, even if they have to stand for election in April, they're standing to only fill out the remainder of that 4-year term. It's not a new 4-year term beginning in April of 2026. The charter calls for the council to decide how to fill it as soon as possible, and to fill it as soon as possible. The election clearly would take longer than an appointment. That's okay under the charter. It's, I guess we're looking on how do you want to do this. If we do have the election, if the council instruct us to go forward with the election, next steps regardless are we post the vacancy and solicit applications from the vacancy or for the vacancy from interested citizens. The clerk then will check and make sure that the applicants are qualified to be council members. And then we will either have interviews in front of the council for an appointment or go through the election process. The election process is going to take, and I'll lean on my clerk here, but somewhere between 60 and 90 days in the best case scenario, because of certain state and federal regulations dealing with elections and overseas voters and issues like that. The appointment process I put some dates in the packet. They're kind of aggressive dates. We don't necessarily have to accept those. It only gives us a couple weeks to solicit applications with the dates we have, but as I said, the appointment process, we could finish in a month. We could finish in a week if we had applicants. It's on the time schedule set by you as a council. So I guess the first question is, which way do you want to go? Election, special election, or appointment? And the next question is, what sort of timetable do you want to set for either of those?
Am I correct then that if we decided to go the election route, optimistically, you would probably be looking at a January election?
Late December or early January, about the same time applicants for the April one have to start getting.
Council members
Well,
Sullivan and then
I just,
move around.
I think it's obvious we should go through the appointment process is my view, but leave this up to others.
Member Format?
I don't love going through the appointment process again at this point. Is there any option, given the election timeline, so that we can get the express will of the people? Is there any way to just roll this into the April election?
You can have the position vacant until the election. I mean, okay, so it says, the charter says you have to fill the position as soon as practicable. Is waiting until an April election as soon as practicable? Arguably, it's not, if appointment is an option. If you don't fill it, and at any time you don't have quorum, your charter provides that the clerk has to order an election.
That's a very good detail to know. A clarifying question. Is it, did you say practicable or practical?
Practicable.
Okay, so then that would preclude cost and logistical considerations as
Well,
as a balance point against speed, is my question.
I think that the speed is the triggering factor really for the timeline.
Good clarification. Thank you.
Other comments or thoughts?
John, you mentioned it could be 30 days. You said it could be 1 week. What was it last time? Do you recall? Can you put your finger on it?
We had about a month for the applicants to get in, and then the next meeting, I think a week later, we had the applications in the week before the meeting. The next meeting, we had gave the clerk time to review the applications, and then the next meeting, we had the interviews and the appointment.
So we could be probably looking at 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, like I said, I put applications September 15th, interviews September 23rd. I think it would be better to actually have applications due by our September 29th, and
I agree.
And then do the interviews at our next meeting.
So that's about 5 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Councilmember. Sure, Martin.
I do like the appointment process over the election process, given that half of the term before the April election would be spent getting and preparing for the election and the cost involved. I like the comment about if we left it vacant. I see some pros and cons. As being the last person appointed to the council, I was only one of 3 people that submitted a letter of interest, given the 1,200 registered voters that we have. So a quick time frame for a submittal of letter of interest, I have concerns about how many people would submit a letter of interest. I like the advantage of if we did have an appointment, someone would have 5-6 months of town council experience going into the April election. But then that goes back to, does someone want to be on the council for 5 or 6 months, knowing that come April election, what's going to happen? Am I reelected? Am I not reelected? So I think there's a lot of nuances that are kind of being presented to us for consideration.
Councilmember Kerr.
Here's an awkward question based on the laydown that Councilmember Martin just gave us. What if we had none or one person to apply? Do we have the authorization to decide not to move forward? Or are we then beholden to appoint the only person?
There's nothing forcing you to appoint the only person who applies. There's nothing in the charter that says you have to do that. So then the question would be, do you open it up for time period to allow other applications? Do you move forward with an election?
Or do we move forward to nothing until April?
If you don't have 7 people, you could end up with tie votes.
Okay.
Well, it can be a problem. Yeah.
Can we explore that? I think most of us understand and not pinning anybody to anything, but do we have an idea of who's going to be out in the next few months?
What do you mean? Vinnie?
What do you mean?
Where we would be put in that position where we would a quorum has to be what? 4?
4.
You would have to have 2 people absent, 3 people absent at the same time to confront that problem you just suggested. Is that correct?
She was talking about tie vote versus quorum, but yes.
Yeah. The quorum requirement doesn't significantly change because we have a quorum is 4 today, right?
Right. Right. So if you had 3 people attending a meeting,
Yeah.
then the clerk is required to set an election under the charter.
Well, let's back up. I'm confused. Could you, so if we had a meeting and we didn't reach quorum, then the clerk would be required to call an election.
Correct. And the charter is consistent with state law. The reason that that's in state law is that you could have multiple vacancies on council, and the idea is you need to fill them.
Well, in a year and a half, has that been an issue or has that arose?
It is not.
So what are your thoughts? Good.
I think tie votes are not ideal. However, I'm pretty sure that our procedure is that the mayor breaks that tie.
No.
No? Okay, thank you for that clarification. In
case of a tie vote, whatever's being voted on fails.
Fails. Okay, well, that's fair enough too, because you don't want something so tight. That's reasonable. Less concerned about that over the short term. I like Councilmember Kerr's point that we might be able to manage the quorum issue. Clarifying question, if the clerk is compelled to order an election, is there a time frame that the clerk is compelled to order that election within, or can the clerk order the election in April?
If the quorum issue were in February
Right, if it was in February, could the clerk order?
versus if it were in December.
The clerk has to call a special election to be held as soon as practicable to fill the vacancy. So again, we use the term as soon as practicable. And I will say there are rules under the Colorado Municipal Election Code that govern when you can have elections related to, say, for example, your November election and related to your April election. You can't hold an election
At a willy-nilly date.
time to either of those dates.
Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you. I understand where most of our points are, and I quite frankly agree with a lot of the concerns and points. But I can't get this feeling that I think we shouldn't restrict the ability of people to be involved in the governing process because of potential concerns. And what I think we are talking about by holding off an appointment until April or not filling the vacancy is just that, by restricting people's ability to be involved in the government process. And I don't know if that's something that would sit well with the constituents or just myself in general. I think that we should at least try to fill the vacancy. And to Councilwoman Kerr's point, if we don't have anyone apply, or if the applicant pool is not to the threshold that would be deemable to be appointment.
Allow us to make a choice.
Of us to make a choice, then we can cross that bridge, I guess, at that point. But I don't think we should determine ahead of time that we shouldn't open it up to appointment because of concerns of that.
Right. I like to consider all possibilities.
Councilmember Permit.
I respect that point greatly, Councilmember Hagenel. The counter, I don't think anyone here wants to restrict the will of the people. I think most of the comments here has been like, how do we affect the will of the people and govern responsibly in choosing folks and giving them the right opportunity in the same way that you could consider it restricting to delay until the scheduled election. You could also take Councilmember Martin's point that you would be restricting some people's ability to participate in government by giving them the onerous requirement of both going through a selection process followed almost immediately by an election. So I think, and feel free to shoot that idea full of holes, but I think that's a valid perspective as well. I don't think we want our constituents to feel that their representation is being denied. So there might also be an option to like get some public feedback on that.
Quite frankly, having been the only member of the council that went through the election and selection process, I don't think it's too onerous. Just in my personal opinion, especially like if somebody really wants to be involved in this organization and help lead the town, I don't think that the minimal, I don't think the process would be too much of an onus or an ask. And back to the comment of the timeline, because I know we had talked about that. I do agree with the longer timeline that we had talked about. So just kind of throwing that out there.
Meaning what?
It's a 30-day window.
I think October 6th and
I
October.
got a question for the attorney. Do we have a timeline in accordance with the charter or the state that we have to make the decision of special election or appointment?
No,
Councilmember Kerr.
I mean, as soon as practicable, that's the timeline.
So my going in position was concerned about asking people to do this work for such a short period of time. However, we have a lot of committed people in this community. I believe we should have, if we are going to appoint, we should be able to choose from at least 2 candidates. We don't have at least 2 candidates. Perhaps we just push that out another 2 weeks if that's feasible. And I agree with the 30-day minimum. But I don't actually see any difference now from the decision to appoint when we appointed Councilmember Martin. Nothing's changed.
Councilmember Permit.
I would, on the last point, I would disagree slightly just because we are so close in. But I think that you make a really good point that we should have multiple choices because we never want to be in a position, we want to be in the position of saying, we, the elected council, are choosing the best of our choices. We do not want to be in a position of saying good enough or not to one candidate. That would be a poor cultural move.
I would say I would say that we ought to be able to evaluate the candidates to determine their qualifications for the position. And if we got 4 unqualified candidates, you could very well make a decision not to appoint either any of them. Likewise, if we got a single candidate that was qualified, we could appoint that candidate.
I agree with that.
That's
a good.
But the qualifications are simply limited to age and
No, from our.
being a voter and being full-time here, right?
No.
What are the other
In our
qualifications?
view of qualifications.
Oh. But that's a decision that's made behind, that's not made publicly, if you're making
You'd
that.
have to make that decision public.
Okay. Yes.
It'd be a public interview, and then we'd have to make a decision. And if, at that point, if people wanted to reject all of the candidates, they'd have to say, I want to reject all of the candidates.
And then we try again.
That would be up to us.
Okay, got it.
One last comment. I think that for the public, there are people that would like to add value to this town. I think this is an excellent opportunity to see if you like this job. You know, so
That's true.
You do it for 4 or 5 months, and then you can decide whether you want to run again.
Yep, that's
So I
other side of the
go back
coin.
to the original proposal that we go ahead with an appointment for the 30 days and move on.
And, you know, I haven't weighed in yet. I tend to be in the same category. Give our constituency an opportunity to apply. And I would find it highly unlikely that we would end up in the situation and say, gee, none of these really are the right fit or have the right real background or the right motivation or whatever. I think that's highly unlikely, but it was brought up earlier. Councilmember Hagan.
I agree with both the last comments, but I would like to also throw my support behind the proposal that Councilwoman Kerr mentioned about a minimum number of applicants. I would agree with 2 as the minimum.
I disagree with that. I think you ought to open it up to whoever wants to apply, and we would apply that lens to it at the time if we get the applicants.
Yeah, if there's one good one and one good person that.
Okay, I'm not going to die on that hill, but you know, I still agree with the comments that you both made.
So are we okay for saying start the appointment process?
Yes.
And 2, aim for a roughly 30-day window for the applicants to apply, and aiming for interviews by the sometime around that first council meeting in October?
So can I recommend the dates, October 6th for applications to be in, and our meeting is October 14th, 8 days.
That's feasible.
It's a long, all right,
30 days.
Yes, that's good.
that's good.
40 days. So thumbs up.
Thumbs
Takes a
up,
while for people to catch on.
thumbs up for everybody on
That's
that?
the word.
Everybody.
All right. All right, it's your guidance. Next item is the discussion of the CAS legislative position on housing. Everyone had it in the packet, and I'll turn it over to the town manager.
Okay, we just received this on Monday, actually, like opinions back by September 8th, which is before our next meeting on legislative authority, or legislative position statements on housing. CAST is proposing that they support the authorization of local short-term rental taxes. This would be to extend this to statutory bonds, which don't have that authority right now. They would authorize local empty home taxes. Personally, as the town manager of Keystone, I don't think we should go anywhere near empty home taxes, but this is not mandating local home taxes. our empty home taxes. It's allowing those communities who do want to do it to initiate some sort of tax, which they don't have the authority to do right now. The same with authorizing local real estate transfer. Actually, they would be transferred probably taxes at that time. It says fees.
They were talking fees at the,
Yeah,
the fees right now are not allowed because of Tabor.
yes, and the way they're doing it is to allow local towns to implement real estate transfer fees, not even taxes, so not going to the voters to get it, but same sort of thing. I think Keystone should certainly at this period in time stay away from something like that. This is not mandating that we adopt it, it's allowing those communities who want to do it. And it might make sense in some communities. There are communities where half the communities are subject to actually transfer taxes because they were passed before the ban on them and all new developments. So having nothing to do with HOA or private agreements, there are some communities where a good portion of the houses are taxed, and this would allow equalization in communities like that, where the tax is actually from the community itself. And those are those are the three big things, and I need to know how our council feels. Do we want to support CAST taking those positions to authorize the local short-term taxes, local empty home taxes, and real estate transfer?
Councilmember Hagan.
Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, please correct me if I'm wrong, and Mr. Manager as well. I just want to be kind of clear that we are not adopting these or saying that we would adopt them. We are simply weighing in on their proposed agenda for their lobbyists, right?
Yes, right.
Okay.
This one way to look at this agenda, the way I look at it is CAST is advocating for more local.
Yep. And one thing I will note, the mayor and I had the distinct privilege to be able to go to the CAST meeting where this was brought up and discussed. And one of the comments I remember when they were presenting this is, quite frankly, state leadership would veto several of these, even if they were to pass the legislature. And so the position that CAST has on some of these is that they don't anticipate them going through, but they want to continue to advocate for these local control issues, like the manager mentioned.
In fact, the real estate transfer or the vacant home tax, they indicated that the governor has already said, if something like that comes to my desk, I will veto it.
Yep.
So, Councilmember Kerr.
As your policy rep, I'd like to give you a little background. First of all, we don't have a CAST policy rep. We've never done that. We might want to put that on the agenda down the road. But because I represented us at the CML policy meeting in the winter, a few weeks later when CAST had one, I was asked to go. So when this was first identified, all three of these ideas at the August CAST meeting in Durango, there were a number of discussion points that I'd share with you. One was that the statutory towns should do the work to become home rule towns rather than a go around, just sharing what was said. Two, that empty home tax is an unproven and divisive idea. And three, that regardless of what member towns and counties think about this, you don't have to do anything if you're not interested. They're just looking for the authority to change life for other counties and towns who do want to. So the CAST manager and the president addressed these issues at the CAST meeting, I think it was in February, and they pointed out the lack of interest. They pointed out the time that they had spent to talk with our representatives to the State House, and they floated the idea that maybe CAST needed to hire a lobbyist. I would say that CML, Colorado Municipal League, is our lobbyist, and what they're doing is trying to have a united front to go to CML to put more impetus. Last year, though, CML did share how they handled this. And their point was they could not find, their lobbyists could not find any legislator ready to sponsor any of the proposed bills. A primary reason was that the governor's office, as the mayor mentioned, had already indicated that he would probably veto the empty home tax. And so it would be a big lift for a legislator to get behind something that was going to be a dead end. But the CML lobbyists advised that more grassroots support would be needed to motivate legislators. Now I'll take off the policy hat, and as a council member here, I'm not sure if this is the grassroots support, but supposedly they think that would be helpful. I am disappointed that these three ideas have been bundled into a support all of these or don't support all of these because of the reasons that you have already. So in the end, they're asking us to say, will you stand with us to look for more local control? So.
Councilmember Haganel.
Thank you. So great points, Councilwoman Kerr. Where I'm standing on this is I would agree with supporting these priorities due to what I'm viewing this as supporting local control. I would not support, though, actually implementing these in our town, right? So there's several of these in our town, right? But what I'm really seeing this as is the ability for us to support a grassroots efforts, as the councilwoman said, and allow us to make the decision if we would like to do this or not. And so what I'm seeing in this case is we'd support it for other towns. We'd support the towns that may want to do this, but we would then have our own decision on if we wanted to do that. And that's why I'd say support it.
And let me, well said, if I could underscore what John said, for two of these policies, they have to go to the voters. It is only the fee, I think, that would, the real estate transfer fee authorization, that would enable a town to just legislate without asking the voters.
Us specifically, we would have.
Us or anyone.
Sure.
Right.
And I believe the fee one also would require voters because of Tabor.
No.
Because doesn't Tabor have a restriction on fees, just taxes?
Correct.
No, just the fee, the requirement would be that the fees would have to be linked to actual costs.
So is anyone against?
Yeah, is anyone against the giving a statement of support for the priorities?
Is it all or nothing?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And we could specify, we don't support this, these two support this one. That isn't what Cass is looking for, but.
A question then on the last one. Well, taxes versus fees is a big issue for me. And I'm always worried about that being the workaround around Tabor. And so I would probably support the other two, not for this town in particular, but I have a problem with third.
And the third one being which?
The transfer fees, the fees. If it was a transfer tax, I'd probably say.
I have a similar philosophical concern with fees. Perhaps, although Cass wouldn't like it, but perhaps the way to approach it is we could say we support the first two. And then the second one, we would be willing to support that if it were a transfer tax, not a transfer fee.
Could I ask for a vote on that?
Could I clarify what I'm hearing though, before we do that? And that is, you are proposing, we support what would in effect be authorizations for the two ideas. They would still have to ask for the voters to support, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
So,
you're good.
And you?
What do you think, Mr. Town Manager?
Yeah, I mean, this is not a finalized.
I know.
That's why they're asking us. So,
Yeah, so
yeah.
we could go in with that. Can I get a thumbs up if you would support that approach?
I would like to clarify, I would like to vote on if it could, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but I've heard two members of the council are against option 3, but I have not heard what the majority of the council is in or against.
Well, though, I am not prepared to have the legislature decide that for us.
So would you support all three or only the top two?
Well, I don't really like the top one, but I would support the two that require a vote by the voters.
And that's why I said the third one, we would not support as written, but we would support it as a tax.
And can I point out though, the way this is, it's the local councils would impose a transfer fee. It's not requesting that the legislature impose a transfer fee on top.
But you know that once the legislator makes that a go, it's going to happen everywhere.
Well,
It's almost
I
the
would
same
trust
thing.
it would not happen with our council,
Probably true.
you know, and I would feel that if it did, I would probably be dealing with the new council.
Yeah, I personally would not support it.
Yeah.
Can I clarify something on the
Yeah.
real estate transfer tax? That's actually prohibited by Tabor. You
Oh, that's
cannot-
another prohibited by.
Yes, so there are legacy real estate transfer taxes that were adopted pre-Tabor, but now you can't do that.
And if I may, attorney, the fees are allowable according to
Yes.
Colorado attorneys, right? Yeah.
So
So quite frankly, I'm not even sure if this is a necessary legislation.
So even if I don't know if these fees are allowed legislatively, transfer fee.
You could, I mean.
Yeah, there's nothing
you'd have to-
right now.
You'd have to say, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to define why the fee is necessary and what's the basis for it and.
In the end, it's akin to the fire district's
Yes.
ploy or proposal that we need this transfer fee because we know there will be costs. So we would have to be in that boat.
But the point is, even if Cass did change her position statement to say real estate transfer taxes, it's prohibited.
Yeah, so that
Yeah,
would
we
not be an
have to go to
option.
a vote.
Well, no, it's prohibited by.
It's
the
flat out
Constitution.
prohibited. No, you can't even vote for a real estate transfer
No,
tax anymore.
we Require an amendment to the state constitution.
Oh, correct.
Tabor.
That will not happen.
I understand that.
We wanted to amend Tabor a long
So I
time.
guess it may be a way to try to approach that last item. Do we want to approach it in an amended form or just say, we don't support the last item, but we support the first two?
I don't think amended would do any good because it. Right.
They would just not count us as part of this, yeah.
Yeah.
And as my fellow council member has mentioned, we've only heard from two people as to the positions on that.
I would support all three. I mean, it's going to the voters. You've got responsible town council, you got responsible voters. So I guess if I'm looking at it as a support for the towns to do what they would like to do, I have no issue in throwing my support behind.
Can I have a proposal? Councilor Hagan.
I would motion to provide a supporting documentation. I don't know. To support all three.
I move that we.
I move that we support all three cast legislative position
Is there
statements.
a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I think we've discussed it a lot.
And in the end, we're just saying, give towns the authorization to consider these and to go to the voters.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
nay.
Motion is carried. All right, I would propose we, at this point, well, two things as we go forward. Since we're going to be getting into the guts of the rest of the council meeting, I would suggest the next item on the agenda is the executive session. And can I legally, with Bob's rules, just ask the council to move that to the last item to be considered before adjournment? And then we'll go through the other items after after coming back from break at 7 o'clock.
So you're proposing that we put the executive session at the end of the whole evening, as we usually do?
As we usually do. Is that acceptable? All right. In that case, any objections to taking a break until 7 o'clock?
Yes.
All right, we are
Better.
recessed.